If you have been hanging around the test equipment and engineering space for some time, you've most definitely come across the fine people from Kerr and Pattinson. This is not my first video about buying things from them. It's actually the second one, but it's the first time in a post-Brexit environment. And yes, in general, everything worked well, and I eventually got the pallet, which you now see. And while the actual costs of the items are obvious from the auction, the question is how much the actual processing cost for palleting and shipping. And here you see it was £360, which might sound like a lot, but in the end it's actually relatively fair, given that there are also some more items contained in the order which I didn't show in the video and which were quite large, namely a huge ass printer and also some kind of electric organ for a business party. And here you see the actual shipping cost. You see, for the customs declaration, I paid €73, which is pretty normal, and Defco really did a very good job. And then here we have the actual customs fee, which is 107,000 forint. So I would say this is approximately €250 or $300. And this excluding these 4 boxes, which are for a dropshipping project with my drone pilot, is basically what was inside the pallet, which I photographed, or rather below the black protective material. And yes, what you see here is a poor person's lazy Susan, because you see, here I have the cloth, so I can move the things around on the table without damaging the table too much. So, and let us start out with what is the physically biggest unit, which is this Kerr Impedance analyzer. We actually bought 2 of them because we didn't know how our impedance analysis situation would play out, and we decided to buy 2 just to make it safe. And so what do we see here? We see a bit of cardboard on the front, in front of the Kerr typical display. So we can turn the guy around a little bit. This will definitely need a clean. And yes, here on the side we find such a token, but this is just a code, so we don't really know much. Here in the back, yeah, you see, some are perfect, some not so much. We do find this bridge is still included, and we see it is set for 230 volts AC already here. So, and yes, this unit will definitely need a good clean. And as all those of you who know me, I've got always a light on when I play with new equipment in case the whole facility gets dark. And now let's power the little guy on. Incidentally, there is no fan noise at all, so probably we have to investigate the little guy a bit. But yes, we see he wakes up A-okay, and so this guy, at least in principle, is not dead on arrival. And yes, whenever you buy something exotic and you can get more than one at a time, it's always a good idea to buy a second one as a victim. And in the case of the Kerr unit, I followed this advice, and so I got a total of 2 of them. And we see here the second unit is in optically a bit of a better state. And here we see that this most probably is not the first time the unit has been sold, because up here we have another auction sticker, and here we have a calibration date only from 2018. So it's relatively new. And here in the front, we also find a bit of instructions. So it's very likely that this guy is the better of the two units. And just in case any one of you wonders about the weird angle, this is always a bit of a luck of the draw type of situation. But you see here, this one comes with the GPIB card with some kind of analog output and also with the feet, which tilt the unit up a little bit to make it more comfortable to use. And yes, when you professionally buy test equipment, it's always a good idea to very carefully look at the pictures, because most auction houses don't really care much about the options, and sometimes you can snag very valuable options for very little money. And as should surprise no one, the unit also starts up. And yes, the legs at the bottom are not particularly stable. They've keeled over literally a few times just while I was playing with the unit. So probably I'm not going to use the legs when I take actual possession of the unit. And what comes next, you can almost expect if you know me, if there's an auction in the UK, and there are Solartron 7150 or 7151 units on auction, I always go crazy and buy a few. The reason for this is pretty simple. If you buy a multimeter, basically you buy into an ecosystem, not just into a multimeter. Especially if you, like these units, have a GPIB in the back. And by now I've got literally hundreds of pages of code for this unit, and so basically I want to have a few spares just in case the situation gets funny. And if we take a careful look at the front, we see these are from Testo, which is another metrology company. They were in calibration until 2012, and then they were discarded, and apparently they were under calibration. I personally think that the reason these units were discarded are these ports here in the front, which are not compatible with EU law. So apparently we have a very good chance that these three units are in a very good state. Of course, everyone who buys a 7150 or a 7151 needs to perform at least a basic bit of maintenance, and this is something I will go over in another video. And what do we have next? This looks big, this looks old. We see leather. And we see Hewlett-Packard, namely we see a signature analyzer. This is a pretty ancient piece of test equipment which is intended to check the performance of the digital parts of older pieces of HP test equipment. And we see here on top a really well-made leather pouch. And finally, this kind of grabber analysis thingy here. We have this pod, you see ground, clock, stop and start, and also this sonde, where we probably can fit some kind of oscilloscope connector on the top. And what do we have here? Let's take another look. It looks like HP from the outside. We see a timing pod. So let's check in a little bit more. Oh ho! Here we see some additional cables. This is quite rare. And what do we have here? Another signature analyzer, sadly with the sticker straight across the display. But other than that, the unit looks reasonably complete. We have here a little on-off switch, the normal old HP buttons, and sadly we see here also integral cables. So if these cables ever break from strain or something, we're in a bad shape. But this is this for now, and more on it another day. And then here we have the final piece of classic test equipment. Let's cut inside. And we find here a telequipment curve tracer. Telequipment essentially is a cheaper version of Tektronix, which the Danaher people basically introduced to have a cheap version for the TV market. So we see here we have a curve tracer, but we also find a few cost reduction measures. I mean, okay, here the button is damaged, but this happens in the best of houses and can be fixed with a 3D printer. But here in the front, we see, for example, banana plugs, very cheap ones. And this obviously was made to bring the cost of this unit down in comparison to, let's say, a Tektronix 5 something series of curve tracer. Power cables and similar accessories very often get lost during auctions. And so when I saw these two little things, I was positively surprised. Let's see what we got in here. Oh, what is this? This is a test fixture for the Tektronix unit. And let's see what this thing is. Oh. And this here is the second one. So we see here that we have a total of 2 of these. One here for classic transistors and the other one for some other kind of transistor thingy. I still have to look at these a bit more in detail, but it definitely is interesting. And also we see here in the back this interface, which is made up of banana plugs, either 4 or 6. In short, what should I say? I'm very happy with the services rendered. I would bid again for Kerr and Pattinson, that's for sure. So from my point of view, a recommendation as always is given. But of course, this is not over yet, because some of the pieces of kit which you saw in the video today will be on the channel soon. So thank you very much for following and see you soon.